Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty and I'm joined today by Sean Martin, Haggerty10 and the Twitter handle and at Sean Martin TCW. You know what to find us. Another quiet weekend, Sean, in the life of Celtic. He says, laughing. First things first, the job in Scottish Cup ties is to get through.
Yep.
Celtic got through, but it came at a cost against Alloa, Sean. 2-1 victory for Celtic. Callum McGregor sidelined for how many weeks is anybody's guess.
Aye.
And a fair few talking points from the game. First and foremost, the result, and who impressed you most, Sean?
First of all, you're right, it is the cup, so it's all about the end result. But I think we all know Ange Postecoglou doesn't just think on things like that. he also looks at how it's been achieved, and he wasn't particularly happy with the performance. But I think considering 5 changes were made to the starting 11, I think it was okay in patches, and I think having read and watched some of the kind of discourse over how Alloa actually played and stuff, which I'm sure we'll come to later on, but I think despite their tactics variously having been described as kind of working to a T and that they played really well and all that, I saw 2 real chances for them and no more, which was Salmon's goal, obviously, and then Salmon's shot, which came from a McGregor mistake rather than their own good play. So while Celtic by contrast scored twice and arguably could have had 4. So I think there was a bit of an overestimation of what Alloa brought to the game for me. And while I do think Celtic were a wee bit wasteful in front of goal, as Ange said, I think in patches they were okay considering half the team was rotated.
I would describe Alloa as agricultural. You might describe them as something else, Sean, and Celtic supporters might describe them as something else. Mm-hmm. But it did come at a cost. Callum McGregor was played in the game. A lot of people disagreed with Callum McGregor actually playing, and it now looks like a fractured cheekbone, possibly. People estimating 48 weeks out in the sidelines. But again, Sean, just that horrendous run of luck with injuries is continuing with Celtic, isn't it?
Well, that's what I think it is. I did suggest in my predicted lineups, which I only get 8 out of 11 for, by the way. But I suggested that I think McGregor should have been rested for the game. It's a sore one, but it's a sore one for him and for Ange Postecoglou because it's yet another selection problem for crucial games. The guy just can't catch a break in that regard. We're still waiting confirmation, obviously, but you said it there. It could be up to 8 weeks, maybe between 4 and 6 weeks. You've seen various reports, but it doesn't look good either way because for me, he's as integral to the way that Celtic play and the way that they want to play going forward as Kyogo is. Yep. And for what it's worth, as I say, I said it in my predicted lineups. I do think he should have been rested for the Alloa game. Mostly, I mean, he should play every game, but realistically, when else was there going to be a chance to give him a rest with all the games coming up, also being must-win games, but against much higher quality opponents? So on that rationale, that was why I thought he should maybe have been rested for that game. But that said, simply playing him in the game doesn't make this Ange's fault or anything like that. For me, cannot legislate getting whacked in the face. So it's not like when he played Kyogo in the Real Betis dead rubber when there was accusations could be levelled at Ange for that. I think it is just massively unlucky.
Yeah, indeed, and hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? You don't know that Callum's going to do. Some comments coming in here, Sean, about the way Alloa played. The buckled Fabry comes in and says, my worst fears came to fruition, injuries. Wow. Rab McEwen, morning Rab, how you doing? Thought we were all right until second half. Saying it was open season of players. And then David Bradley, Sony Ferguson put out that team to make sure they injured their players. There's lots of schools of thought like that. Simon Thomas, morning Simon, regular contributor. Other players probably cost a line with physicality. Will McMillan, Alloa brought not in the game except injuries to our players. Look, a lot of supporters annoyed at the way Alloa played. Sean, David Bradley comes in again and says could cost us big time. So I mean, it's my concern as well was the challenge on Giakoumakis.
Aye.
I used the word agricultural, but it was reckless, and if that's not a sending off, then, and not for the first time this season, Celtic players have been on the receiving end of some wild challenges which the referees have failed to deal with, Sean. Is that the way you saw it as well?
That challenge, first of all, that tackle, I do think it was a red card. I also think that Niang won the ball, and it's a follow through that's good through Gucci's ankle. But I'm going to use the term that was used on a certain highlight show. Whether or not Gucci has got in full blooded or not is largely irrelevant, because the follow through to me could make it serious foul play and therefore a red. In general, I mean, I had a wee look at IFAB's kind of definitions of stuff, because people always like to throw that up if it's a contentious decision, although I don't think it would have been contentious. And in general, I think it goes with what they call playing in a dangerous manner. Their definition says, 2 seconds, I've got it here. Playing in a dangerous manner is any action that, even while trying to play the ball, threatens injury to someone, including the player themselves, and includes preventing a nearby opponent from playing the ball for fear of injury. I think that is exactly what happened there. So, I mean, I think the bigger issue is probably the way that the ref chooses to apply the logic to the situation, you would argue, rather than the actual Niang's actual intentions, because I still think he won the ball, but I think it was his follow through, and the ref's got to be the one to say something about it.
The way the ref never applied.
Yes, exactly.
John, to be fair, and not for the first time. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you can get more conclusive than IFAB, Sean, than what you've quoted there. So I think that's it lets a lot of people see or hear what the actual rules on it are, and for me, it's a blatant red card.
No, I agree. I think it is a red card, and as I say, I say that in the knowledge that I do get that Niang did win the ball, but just because he won the ball didn't necessarily make it a clean period of play, if you know what I mean. So, it's up. Ultimately, to me, it comes down to the referee for that rather than the players themselves. I do see why people would say, "Oh well, Gucci never went in," and all that, but as you've just read for the IFAB thing, they account for that. They account for someone feeling they can't go in because they feel they're going to get injured. So,
yeah, and you alluded to a popular football highlights program. I have to say, the way that was discussed was, I don't know, I've never heard anything like that in my life. Thankfully, Peter Grant was there, who liked to challenge himself in midfield. I didn't actually. I saw the clip of a specific player talking about the incident because it was put up on Twitter. Didn't hear what Peter Grant said, but my father assures me that Peter Grant was saying yes, it's a red card, and it is a red card. That's all I can say about that.
But it's a much different time from when Peter Grant played as well. So when he was playing, all right, fair enough. He probably would have found he himself would say back in the 80s, in the early 90s, right, maybe the other guy should have went in. Again, I'm going to use that term that was used, more full-blooded, but it's not the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, correct. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And as I said earlier there, Sean, it's not the first time this season that Celtic players have come off worse in challenges like that, and nothing's been done about it.
You wrote an article, didn't you? Obviously, it was focused on the Celtic things, but ultimately, to me, I've already said it there. The bigger issue is the way the ref chooses, or as you said, chooses not to apply what I just say, really, isn't it? But just it's the latest in a long line of what I would maybe call evidence that full-time refereeing is badly missed in this country compared to others. That's not to say other countries don't have referees make mistakes. Of course they do, but it does seem that I'm saying you wrote about the Celtic decisions, but obviously it's not only Celtic who have this complaint, and it's fairly regularly. So it seems that there is a conversation to be had about it, even though I do acknowledge saying full-time refs is just a phrase. I acknowledge it's probably not as easy as simply saying, right, go full-time, because the current crop of refs have their own jobs and stuff, but still, it's still a point to be made.
I made the point that someone was going to get seriously hurt, not just a Celtic player. That was the point I was making. And that every club has a litany of refereeing decisions. And as you said there, it's consistent. We're talking about referees every other week. Every club, not just Celtic, but because we watch Celtic, we focus on the Celtic-related refereeing issues and matters. I think that's fair enough, isn't it?
That's what they've got to remember. But obviously, the guys watching just now, we're all here because we want to talk about Celtic, so it's always going to be framed around Celtic where we're concerned. Yeah. But you did make the point in your article that it isn't just Celtic. You were just highlighting the Celtic ones.
Correct.
And as I say, it's regularly other clubs are saying the same as well. So
which is what a lot of people missed in that whole thing, But there you go. Now, Sean, who plays in the Celtic midfield moving forward then?
Well, this is potentially something you'll maybe get my full explanation for on a wee piece on the site in the next couple of days. But it's a difficult one because, as I say, McGregor is as integral as Kyogo to the way that Celtic want to play. For me, the way that he takes the ball off the defence, the way that he shows for it, the way that he will do it under pressure in a way that none of the other midfielders currently will do it in as deep as he'll do it, kind of thing. He's grown into that leadership role as well with the armband around his arm as well. But if you're asking me to go, I think Beaton's got to come back in at the base. I think he has played well since he went back into midfield. He's obviously not giving you quite as much as McGregor, but he has been playing well when he's played there. So not only that, but his experience, I'd probably put him in there. There could be shouts for Giakoumakis. I'll say on Giakoumakis, I will keep calling him Giakoumakis. I am not going to get down the route of Gucci. I think it's only a hop, skip and a jump on the team lines till you're doing an Aberdeen and putting Jet instead of J. Manuel on it. But there's suggestions there. But I think if you're asking me right now, I think it's got to be Beaton, Hatate, and then another. And that's maybe going to be Matt O'Reilly now that he's come in. I realise it's a baptism of fire, but in terms of another creative midfielder with Rogic going away in international duty, I don't think a midfield of Beaton, Hatate and Giakoumakis is creative enough. So I think it might be a baptism of fire for Matt O'Reilly.
Bearing in mind that Matt O'Reilly was actually in a rich vein of form with the MK Dons, so to me that wouldn't necessarily be a bad shout. Risky per chance, but you're maybe facing a crucial part of the season, a critical part of the season with 3 new midfielders.
And this is where I'm saying, as
Postecoglou and O'Reilly or Vita, and it depends how many ones.
I mean, Ange just can't catch a break. It's every single time a crucial run of games comes round, there's something happens. I mean, we knew about the international break that was going to cause some problems, but then for McGregor to get injured as well is just compounds that. There's a left field, and this might be spoiling what I'm going to suggest on one of my articles, but do you remember back when we were kind of discussing Kyogo's first injury, and I put forward that maybe Abada or Forrest could maybe try and play up front in his absence and replicate what he brings. So in that kind of vein, is there a shout that Juranovic maybe plays in midfield, given that he used to play there when he was younger and is so comfortable on the ball and stuff? Physicality might be an issue, but I mean, if he's going to have the ball for the majority of the game.
Well, you look at that, and that's maybe not such a bad shout because you could bring in Ralston, and Scales did really well on the left of Taylor. You like Taylor? You know,
I mean, I think Taylor's the first choice. I mean, Scales done well, but I mean, I think if we're going to go into left back, I think he's got the same problem as Taylor, in that the two of them don't really beat a man.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's got the height, but I would argue that of the appearances that he's made, Alloa was the first time I really kind of noticed his height in his game, in his play.
Yeah.
So he played well though. Good ball in the middle for Giakoumakis' goal. But I think with the Juranovic centre mid thing, it almost means that, as you say, Ralston could come in at right back if Juranovic was to play in midfield.
Yeah.
Regular first teamers that you're keeping in the game. But ultimately, it's not an easy decision. It's not even a decision that you would want to make because, as you say, it's potentially 3 midfielders that are only in the door that start.
What about McCarthy?
I thought he'd done all right when he came on, but I think it's maybe saying a bit that.
Tell you what he did do, Sean. He put the foot in.
I bet he's done that already. He's one of the. That's pretty much all he's done already.
He's pretty much the only Celtic midfielder that actually tackles.
Aye, although I must admit he did go to ground far too early a couple of times, taking his cell out of the game. But no, I don't mind. I don't mind a bit of physicality from him. I've argued before that is what he's brought. It's the additional things that he needs, or I don't know if he will get them because I just don't know if he's capable of it. But I think it says a lot that it was a game like Alloa that he kind of done all right. He's shown once or twice he's got a pass in his locker. He doesn't do it often enough. Maybe he should attempt it more. Maybe that's the thing. But no, I don't think he comes into my thinking at all for a starting berth really. Now, no, I think Beaton, Hatate, and then another. Aye.
What about Giakoumakis? Were you impressed with him?
He He done all right. He took his goal. He took his goal really well. It was a very, very good finish. I think you underestimate how difficult that first time volley finish is from a whipped in cross. I think the movement across the defender and then the finish, I think there's literally nothing wrong with it. I think he done really, really well. Obviously, right after that, so he's naming lights for a brace. But I don't know if I can blame him for not passing because he is a striker. He's wanting to get a second goal and stuff. But ultimately, the best option would have been to pass. So
yeah, but Sean, if you look up, if you're a team player, all you have to do is just look up and
just square it.
Punt it to the side, and Maida's got a tap in. I think that separates the great players from good players. And you're aware of the picture. It's difficult. There's a guy trying to pull you back, and you're struggling to get a shot away. Just look to the side and shunt it to the side, and your man's rolling into an empty net, and it's like that. That's two goals.
Maybe been watching Larson scooping it over the keeper at Boa Vista. Thought that'll be easy. He'll just scoop it into the corner.
But as you said there, Larson would have scored.
Larson would have scored.
There's a big difference.
Or he'd have done the wee roll past
or he would have rolled it to his teammate because he would have the presence of mind and awareness, spatial awareness to do that. So that's what separates, as I say, the great and the good players.
But no, I think he done all right. I think it's a confidence booster for him to have scored. He said himself that he could have had another goal. I don't know if he was talking about that incident right enough because he maybe still says I should have passed it. But he himself spoke well after the game and basically gave you a wee insight into the injury and the way that it's taken its toll on him so far, because it's not easy to settle into a new club when you're injured and different things. And he said the season starts now for him. And Alison McConnell's done an opinion piece that's went on the site today, basically reinforcing that it's not that it just starts now. It's a massive 3-game stretch where he could play and start in all 3 games.
Well, the bottom line is, if he does play, Sean, he's going to have to score in those 3 games. He's going to have to make a vital contribution for Celtic in these 3 games if he's to be relied upon.
Well, that's the thing. There is no real margin for error now, and I'd say before, the top scorer in the Eredivisie, all that, but obviously the game time he'd had up till recently was largely as a sub, and he done well when he came on as a sub, seeing out games, playing a wee bit more physically, winning fouls, taking balls in, laying it off and stuff. But ultimately, number 7, top scorer in the Eredivisie, you want more. That's not the role that he's been brought in to play. Now, whether he's going to be in that starting 11 when everybody's fit, I would argue not. But regardless, it looks like he's going to be in it for a crucial stretch of games. So as Alison said in her piece, it is time for him to step up now.
Jota coming back on Saturday, Sean, an automatic starter now, is he not?
I think so. I think it was a quieter game from him than we're used to, but I still think it had an impact when he came on. I still think he put the fear into the defenders as he always did. I think it's definitely a boost having him back. It's one of the silver linings.
You saw that Cosy get clattered, Sean.
But he got straight back up and kept possession. So I know it eventually did get dragged back for a foul, but he did. He kept possession, managed to get back up and was ready to go again.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I liked about Jota. He looked hungry, didn't he? He looked as if he'd been champing at the bit to get on the park and show what he could do. And even on a surface like that, he wasn't hiding. He was demanding the ball and he was trying to make things happen. So it's kind of same old Jota, really, wasn't it?
Aye, and it bodes well for these these kind of next. I keep saying the next 3 games. There's obviously far more than 3 games left, but these next 3 games are kind of widely, people have been identifying them as crucial, and I'd agree with that. Having Jota back gives you options as well, because, for instance, if it's not working with Giakoumakis starting up front, you can go back to Abada through the middle.
Yeah.
Because Forrest is there and Jota's there as well, so it's acceptable. I wouldn't say it's brilliant options considering Maida's away and Kyogo's still out just now and stuff, but it's acceptable options up front. It's midfield I'm now worried about again. So
it's all right, Sean. The next 3 games are just season defining. Don't worry about it. In terms of importance, I think it's reached the season defining stage. We were at the 1 game at a time speech last week. We'll just take every game as it comes. Now the next 3 games have become season defining. You know what I mean? So probably on that note, we shall reconvene tomorrow. Guys, thanks for your comments. We always appreciate it. We try and read them out. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Sean and I will away and discuss who's going to feature for Celtic in the next 3 games, season defining as they may be. I wouldn't want to be Anne, Sean.
Oh, that's why he gets the big bucks, though.
Indeed, and why we don't. Guys, thanks very much for your time, Sean. I always appreciate your contribution. Tremendous today. Thanks a lot, bud.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, guys.